You never know what to expect when you wake up in the morning. This is the McShay Show. Thank you for joining us. We've now got a jam-packed show. Didn't expect to have to get to this, but Coach Prime, his recent comments about Shedeur Sanders, his son, also Travis Hunter, his star two-way player, and how it's going to be affected in the NFL draft, the role he's going to play. After that, Mensch, are you fired up or what? This is an historic day on the McShay Show. We're thrilled to debut our college football playoff championship confidence draft. It's going to be epic. Then we're also going to drill down. We've got the biggest matchup of this week in college football, another primetime game in the SEC, Tennessee at Georgia, and then plus our Thursday staples, of course. That's my guy. Where are the scouts this weekend, and where would Todd be this weekend? You know where we're going from here. It's week 12 in college football, week 11 in the NFL, and just 161 days until the NFL draft. Mensch, you good?
I'm good, man.
All right, let's play those urban horns. Mensch, this is not the show. We're not going to be the show, and I promise anyone who's a friend of the show, who watches and downloads and subscribes and likes, we are not going to be the show that is always talking about the Dallas Cowboys and Coach Prime. We're not going to we're not going to ram it down your throat for the sake of ratings. It's just not who we are. We have too much respect for all of the friends of the show, for all the fan bases. There are 32 NFL teams. There are college fans across the country. They want to know where their players are going in the draft. They want to talk college football. They want smart conversations. When we get into the draft, portion of this show during draft season, we want to talk about all 32 teams. We want to talk about the Carolina Panthers and what they need just as much as the Dallas Cowboys. But here we are. And Coach Prime discussing Shedeur Sanders, his son, and Travis Hunter, his draft prospects, both of their draft prospects, and bringing it up, their situations. To me, everything is intentional with Coach Prime. To bring up this discussion about how he's going to interfere or interject himself in where they wind up landing in the NFL draft during, Mensch, a Big 12 run to the college football playoff.
Right.
That's news.
It's not coincidence. Yeah.
Right. That's intentional, and it creates urgency. And so that's where we are today. We're not going to spend a ton of time on it, but I think this is the time where we have to have a smart conversation about the number one storyline leading up to the 2025 NFL draft, because Coach Prime himself made it news. Okay.
Right.
Here's how I want to attack this.
Okay.
For those of you who didn't hear, it was on Keyshawn Johnson was asking questions, and he was answering on their podcast, and Coach Prime decided to answer those questions and to dive in. Ultimately, what you need to know, if you haven't seen that on social media or you haven't watched their podcast, Keyshawn asked him the question: Are you going to? And I'm paraphrasing here, but are you going to affect where the landing spot is for Shedeur? And his answer was yes, but I'm going to do it privately, right, not publicly. Yes, I am going to play a role, but I'm going to do it behind the scenes. I'm going to do it privately, not publicly. And he doubled down on it and said, I'm also going to do it with Travis Hunter, our star cornerback wide receiver. And so, and they laughed about it, just the fact that, that basically his third son on the team, and that he's going to treat Travis's situation just like Shedeur's.
Yeah, that is a unique relationship. I think most people know that at this point, but Travis Hunter and Coach Prime are closer. There's a lot of great coach player relationships around the country, but this one is unique. They are very close.
For the sake of this conversation, let's focus on Shedeur, because I do think he'll affect where Travis goes, but I think there could be a package deal to be made. Okay. So
interesting. Yeah.
People know that Coach Prime is serious when he says that Shedeur won't play for you as an NFL organization if you draft him. And
they better take it seriously. Yeah.
But why? And my answer is, what about Coach Prime and Primetime and Deion Sanders? What about his nearly 40-year run in college football and the NFL would lead anyone to believe that he won't hold Shedeur out if the wrong team takes him and goes against his will. My answer to that.
Ask the Braves. Remember what he did in the NLCS, and they wanted him to sit out the game for the Falcons and come play in the playoffs for us. And he's like, "No, man, I'm gonna do my thing because it's best for me."
That's
like
a great.
There's never been a time in this guy's career where he's not. I don't want to say he's selfish. He just does he still played. He still showed up for the Braves that day. He's just going to do what's right for his family and what's right for him.
That's why I said, what about his 40 years and add Major League Baseball to it? That's a great point. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
So what about what he has stood for his entire career going back to Florida State? If you think of like the cover of Sports Illustrated, the jewelry everywhere, prime time, you got to remember, a lot of people listening or watching may not even remember, at that time, I remember my grandfather worked with Bo Schembechler and was part of their, recruiting and it was, this isn't allowed. We can't do this, and I'm like, I'm in high school and I'm like, I kind of love this,
right.
But he did it his way. He's always done it his way. And so when I ask you, what about his, his history leads you to believe that he won't hold Shedeur out? And the answer is nothing.
There's precedent in the league too. Like this kid, Shedeur, will not be the first quarterback to do this. You can't sit there and be like, this is different. It's been done before.
20 years ago was the last time of this significance that we saw an incident like this. It was more private. The difference is that the Mannings worked kind of behind the scenes. People didn't realize how serious they were. Some people in the league kind of knew what was going on, but it wasn't public like this. The Mannings handled their business quietly.
Not this early. I think it was very public towards the end.
Towards the very end.
Early in the process, yeah.
And I remember it was the first NFL draft, first or second NFL draft where I was in New York City. I was in the stands. We were working for Sporting News at the time.
Yeah, I was there.
There. You remember Ben Roethlisberger?
Right.
Who else?
Phillip
Rivers and Eli Manning. Where are these three quarterbacks can go? So it's been 20 years since we've had this kind of situation. But of course, Coach Prime being Coach Prime, we're going to do this. He's saying privately, and those conversations will take place privately, right? But he's using the media now. And I just want to say this, he liked one of our clips. Everything he does is intentional. We're going to get Coach Prime on the show. We'll reach out to him. Yeah, let's reach out to him this week and see in the next few weeks if we can get him on. I'm sure he'll be happy to join. We'll get him on the show and we'll have a great discussion with him about all of this and how he plans to attack it and some more details on it. Okay. But in the meantime, I think it's important for us to have this conversation now because this information is new, it's fresh. And again, I want to reiterate, they're playing Utah this week. Utah almost beat BYU. Utah
did beat BYU.
Utah beat BYU.
Well, BYU won the game.
But
the refs blew it.
Correct. They had the sack at the goal line, and they called a holding penalty in the back end. Gave them new life. Right. They drove down the field. I was up watching the game after our review show on Saturday night, our live show on YouTube. And so my point is, let's not get sidetracked. My point is that they're playing Utah this week. We've talked about it before. Colorado almost lost to North Dakota State. Colorado lost 2 of its first 5 games. Colorado was dead to rights. The story's, it's old news. Coach Prime, who cares? Boulder, Colorado, it's back off the map. Now, all of a sudden, they've won, 3 straight, looking to make it 4 against Utah, and they win out. They can get in the Big 12 championship, win the Big 12 championship. They're in the college football playoff. Right. And so this week, to be making these comments tells you how serious Deion is. Tells you how serious this situation is in Coach Prime's house with his son, with Travis Hunter. Go ahead.
I like that he's getting ahead of it too. Let's get it out there now. If you wait and it's gonna look, this was not something that we were surprised by. I don't think anyone was surprised by this. You get it out now, it gives it more time to, kind of air out for people to get used to the idea, understand what's happening. It's not a big deal later on. I understand the stakes haven't been higher for the Colorado football program in years. But I think this is a guy that, he should be in crisis management if he's not in a coach for football. He knows how to handle all of these different things. Right. I just don't see this being a problem for his team. So I get it. Like it's crazy. It's not crazy. It's interesting that he's doing it now. And the fact that he is doing it now speaks to how important it is to him. But I don't think it's going to be an issue for that team.
So if we've answered the question, is he serious about holding out Shedeur and making an organization miserable for going against his will and drafting his son? That question's answered. We know he will. So now let's get into the nitty-gritty. Coach Prime is a package deal. That's what you have to take seriously here, okay? Coach Prime loves being in Boulder. He loves coaching Colorado. They've been great to him. He's been phenomenal to them.
Right.
But Coach Prime is a package deal, and I want people to understand the dude can coach.
Right.
Okay? This is not like, oh, we're just going to bring him in, flashy lights, all that. Like people I've talked to people in NFL organizations. I've talked to him in the last couple of weeks, and there is people in the NFL take him seriously as a coach. Okay? Yeah. So now that's as the backdrop. So Coach Prime as a package deal in all this is critical. So if you can, now I want you to put on your ownership hat, okay? Not even general manager, because this is above that pay grade. This is ownership now, okay? So if you can get Prime as your coach and Shedeur as your quarterback, and that's the direction you decide you want to go. Now, we can get into a discussion, and we just had one on Tuesday. I thought it was a really good, deep, in-depth breakdown. If you haven't seen it, go check it out on social media. Go check it out on our YouTube page, The McShay Show. But we got into Shedeur Sanders. He is not Jaden Daniels. He's not the talent level of Caleb Williams, okay?
Right.
He's not probably Drake May. We've all decided that. Like, if it was last year's draft, Shedeur, we'd start talking about him at number 4, okay? Right. But he is in, I would say, majority, and I don't even know. Let me say this. It's important for people to understand. Decision makers and evaluators I talk to in the league are not nearly as high on this quarterback class. Talking Shedeur, talking Cam Ward for Miami, talking Jalen Milroe, Garrett Nussmeier we've mentioned. We think he should go back to school. Talking Carson Beck, Quinn Ewers. They are not as high on this quarterback class as the media seems to be. But I also want to tell you that doesn't necessarily mean that one of, and most likely Shedeur, is not going to be a top 5 pick. It's the quarterback position. We know how that goes. Right. So if you decide as an owner and as an organization that you want Coach Prime to be your next head coach and you want Shedeur to come as the next quarterback of your organization, I want people to hear this loud and clear. There's almost no limit to the price you're willing to pay. If you've made this decision as an owner, one of 32 owners in the NFL, we want Prime and we want his son Shedeur. We want the package deal. We've got to turn our organization around, and they're the 2 men that can do it for us. There's no price that organization would. I'm telling you. So keep that in mind.
You look back at the trade we just talked about. And at the time, that was mind blowing in 2004.
Yep.
Yeah, it was
with the Chargers, the Giants, and
it wasn't that. It was the Chargers traded back from the 1st to the 4th with the Giants, and I think they picked up 2 picks from the next year, including the 1st from the next year. That trade's not as crazy as we thought it was at the time. It wasn't that big. So let's get into. By the way, they both were wrong. They should have taken Roethlisberger and not traded up for anyone. But anyways, let's look at the Ricky Williams trade. Are we talking Ricky Williams trade here, Todd? I mean, listen, in terms of if you want Coach Prime as your head coach, pay him whatever he wants. You slide him a piece of paper,
there's no
he
price.
Writes down a number, and he gives it back to you. Are you talking about if you are picking 7th and you need to get to 2 or 1 to get Shedeur, are you making the Ricky Williams trade?
I'm saying there's almost no limit to the price you're willing to pay. If you believe it, I'm not saying you should believe that they're going to be the answer, but I also want you to keep this in consideration when you start talking about Ricky Williams trade, when you start talking about Eli Manning trade, when you start talking about what could this cost and would it be worth. I want you to keep this in consideration because this is important. Owners in the NFL are business people too. Okay. Right. even without the wins and the losses, even when your scouting department comes to you and say, listen, I get it. Shedeur's a good player. He's got a chance to be a good pro. We made the NFL comps. Maybe he's Tua from the right side. Maybe he's Geno Smith. You tried to go a little bit higher, with Joe Burrow. I thought that was a reach, quite honestly.
I think it's a little bit of a reach too.
But I think if he exceeds expectations, that's the absolute ceiling. I think we're looking more like a Geno Smith. I think we're looking at more like a Tua and what they are in the NFL. But even without the wins and losses and your scouting department advising you, I can't make this more clear. Owners make the decision in this kind of situation, and owners own the NFL franchise because they're typically great business people. Okay. And I want you to look, I want you to keep this in consideration. Look at the economy in Boulder, Colorado. Look at the increased budget at University of Colorado since the Sanders made Boulder its home less than 2 years ago. Study that for me. Just do some Google searches on the increased athletic budget, on the desire and passion for young people in high school that want to go to Colorado. That place has been reinvigorated. Okay. The local budget, the commercials, the attention, the media. So you take that in Boulder, a small little party, hippie town, fun town, great place to go to college. You can ski. You take that in Boulder and you bring that to New York City. You bring that to Las Vegas. You bring that to New Orleans. You bring that to Dallas. Do you understand? So while it always should be about the football at the end of the day and the wins and losses and pursuing a Lombardi trophy, it's not always. Okay.
I hear you. I think it's a great point. I just think I want to know I want to talk to Coach Prime because I don't want to put words in his mouth. I don't want to assume what is his, I don't want to know the team name. I want to know what the top 3 things he's looking for in an organization for his son to go play there and for him to potentially coach there, which he may not want to get into at this point, which is understandable. But what are the top 3 things he's looking for?
Well, he in that interview, he didn't get through top 3. And that's why we'll get him on the show. We'll get him on the show at some point. But he did stability, I believe. And I'd have to go back and watch it, and people can get it, online and go check out the interview. But he mentioned stability, like organizational stability, and basically the right people in the organization. It wasn't. I think he made something. It wasn't necessarily about climate. It wasn't necessarily about where to play.
Right.
But like going to an organization with stability, and that that's a perfect transition. Let's take a look right now at the draft and what the draft order is right now. Okay, and I want you to take a look at this simply because I think it's important. Like, where are the landing spots? Okay. Right. And I look at this draft order, right. And I'm looking at the Giants at number 2. I'm looking at the Raiders at number 5. And it's important to mention this with the Las Vegas Raiders. Tom Brady is there. Okay. Part owner.
Yeah.
Just became part owner of that organization. 2 other things I want you to keep in mind. Okay.
Yep.
Where did Shedeur spend time this past offseason? Training with Tom Brady.
Right.
Okay. So there's a relationship between Shedeur and Tom. There's a relationship between Coach Prime and Tom. And also there was a basketball game recently. I don't know all the details, but that Mark Davis, the owner of the Raiders, was there and talked glowingly about Shedeur. And I guess any player, draft prospect, you're going to talk glowingly. But again, these people have made billions, not millions. And Coach Prime has done what he's done, probably hundreds of millions. And when you have people of that level of success, I've had the great fortune of being around some unbelievable head coaches, some unbelievable owners, some people who are at the elite level. And this job has afforded me that opportunity. The word I always use is intentional, man. Nothing comes out of the people who are like at the highest level. Nothing comes out. There's always messaging, and it's always intentional. So keep the Raiders in mind. That's fascinating to me. Then you go down. I'll give you 3 more, and then you
go ahead.
take it wherever you want, bud.
Okay.
The Jets at 8. Joe Douglas is there as the GM. His contract's up at the end of this year. Woody Johnson, if you don't want to take my word for how interfering some owners can be and some of the issues that Woody Johnson has presented for this Jets organization, you don't see it on the field. Go check out some of the comments from Bill Belichick. And yes, there's an axe to grind, but again, intentional. And Bill Belichick's not going to make those comments about someone he respects in ownership. Okay, even if he let him down or they did bad business, he's not going to unless he believes it. So my point in all saying that is there's a chance, and it's looking more likely than not. There's a chance that organization, Woody's just going to do whatever he wants, clear it out. He's already cleared out his head coach, and try to reset it all. Aaron Rodgers, is he going to be back next year? So maybe this would be time. So the Giants at 2 are interesting. The Raiders, we see the connections there already at number 5. The Jets, with that ownership, absolutely. The Saints are intriguing to me. I don't know that there's any connections or ties, but the Saints are sitting at 9 right now. And then we promise you this is not going to be a Dallas Shedeur podcast or show. but there's a lot of smoke right now about the Cowboys, what's happened to this organization. Obviously, Jerry Jones is the owner. No one likes attention more on his franchise than Jerry Jones does. And I truly can't think of anything. Come up with one scenario this upcoming offseason after a massively disappointing season for the Dallas Cowboys. Give me one scenario, Mensch, that would be more attention-grabbing and create more buzz and more excitement for the Dallas Cowboys than orchestrating a trade and getting Shedeur Sanders as your future starting quarterback with Coach Prime as the new head coach of the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, there's nothing even close to based in reality. You'd have to be like, oh, the Cowboys trade for Mahomes. Like, there's nothing real that could possibly happen that is anywhere near as good or as exciting for a team like that. What do they do with Dak's contract, though? I mean, that thing is a albatross. Like, who's taking that on if you're going to move on from Dak? What's the penalty if you cut? Like, it's tough. And then the other thing is, look, and this is what I was going to say about the Raiders. I love that. I mean, I think that's great. He goes with Brady. I think, the Raiders, it would be just so great, right? If you're looking at this, he's throwing to Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers, who has a chance to be special, but is young. And I mean, what are his offensive line? Like, what is Coach Prime looking for? Because then if you're giving up draft assets,
but there's free agency, and now maybe a lot more people want to make Vegas their home,
Maybe.
I'm just saying. Maybe. I mean, if he can get a bunch of young men to go to Boulder, Colorado to play for an organization, that was, I think, 1-11 prior to last season, 2023. If he can turn that whole roster over, I mean, it's different recruiting in high school versus recruiting in the NFL, but
devil's advocate,
he's worked with a lot of dudes in the NFL.
First of all, if you're a corner and you don't want to play for him, I don't know what's going on. I don't care what level you're at.
Right.
I will say devil's advocate. And again, I don't know. This is just, something to think about is if you're going to a situation where the coach is going to play his son as a quarterback and that's it, and has never won an NFL game as a head coach, there are guys who are going to love that. They're going to love that situation because he's proven to be a good coach. But there's going to be other guys who might have some hesitations about going into that kind of a situation. The Raiders haven't done anything. It might, if he goes there and he has success, it'll be the top landing spot, one of the top landing spots in the league. But there might be some guys like free agents who are like, I feel a little more comfortable signing.
But it only takes a handful, man, and his connections, like his imprint.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll see. That's something that's going to have to play out.
The young guys he's worked with that now play in the NFL, I'm telling you,
he's also done. I mean, what he's done at Colorado in terms of yes, he's gotten a lot of players to come in, but the way he's developed guys too. I mean, I'm with you. I think he's a great coach. I think the sky is the limit for what he can do in the league, but you're not convincing me. You know what I mean? You're convincing guys who have played in the league for 7 years and may want to go somewhere where they think they can win a championship sooner. It's going to be interesting how that all plays out. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you're right.
One last thing I just want to address, okay? And then we'll move on. We've got so much college football. Like we're mid-November now. We've got the college football playoff race. We've got to get to our championship draft. Let's throw that graphic back up, the draft order, okay? Here's the draft order. I'm intrigued by this, man. So now Shedeur's working the phones. Let's say it's Jacksonville. Let's say it's Cleveland, okay, picking at number 1. And let's say absolutely Coach Prime is working behind the scenes privately, as he says, talking to teams and saying, we're going to the Raiders at 5. Let's see it. Let's say it's the Jaguars at 1. Let's say it's the Browns at 3 that wind up picking at number 1. Let's say it's the Titans that pick at number 1. Let's even say it's the Giants picking at number 1. They want to bring in Prime, but he doesn't want to go there. They want to bring in Shedeur, and they're told that go ahead, draft us, draft my son, but he's not going. How do you manage this as the team, and maybe multiple teams? Let's say this is the draft order. You're the Jaguars.
Yeah,
I'm taking Shedeur.
Absolutely. Again,
because the second I pass on Shedeur at 1, I've lost all my leverage. I'm out of this game. This game is fruitful. This game with Coach Prime and Shedeur, there's a lot to benefit from. And I want to be right in the middle of this thing. I don't care if I need a quarterback. I don't care if I don't need a quarterback. If I'm picking at 1 and I'm not the anointed organization or one of 2 or 3 anointed organizations where Shedeur's allowed to go and potentially I'm coming with him as Coach Prime, I'm taking him.
Right. If you're the Patriots who took Drake May last year, you are taking Shedeur Sanders because it's the asset. It's business.
What I'm not doing is letting the draft go by. And then all of a sudden you wake up Sunday morning, 256 picks later, and you're like, shit, I got Shedeur on my team. We don't need a quarterback, or I do, but like he ain't going to come play for us. He's holding out. Now you've lost your leverage.
Right.
Where you have, and it's a dangerous game. It's a dangerous game. But where you have the leverage, if you're picking at number 1 or picking at number 2, you're not the anointed team, but you know of 1, 2, or 3 anointed teams below you. Yeah. Where you got to go get yours is on the clock. Right. And so a deal has, and if I'm picking at 1, I'm telling everyone, we're taking Shedeur. I don't care if I have Trevor Lawrence. We're taking Shedeur.
He's the best player in the draft. He's the best player on the board, all that stuff.
If you want him, come get him. This is going to be fun, man.
It is. And you're right, though. You have to, again, it's not like the Chargers waited until the next Wednesday to trade, to make the Manning for Rivers trade. I mean, it was done that night very quickly.
And this is why I love having this conversation too, because we're fortunate at what we do. Like, we're acutely aware of what this draft is. And there's not a lot of podcast shows, TV outlets. Like, not a lot of people know in detail what this draft is and can break it down. What I'm promising you right now, and talking to the league and just studying tape in my own eyes, and I know, Mensch, you agree, this is not a great or elite draft at the top. We've got some really good players. It's a damn good running back class. It's a damn good edge class. There's a lot of depth in like the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round this year. Teams are going to want to move back. Okay, but my point to all of this is, if you are a Jacksonville or you are a Tennessee and you wind up with that first pick, if you are the Cleveland Browns and you're not anointed, you wind up with that first pick, you take them. And if you got to wait and trade to 11 with the Dallas Cowboys, or you got to wait and trade to 5, you're not missing out on like a generational left tackle. You're not missing out on a generational edge rusher. There's a lot of good edge rushers. So what I'm getting at 5 or what I'm getting at 11, it's almost as good as what I'm getting at 1. So that adds to it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, you don't have to get a ton in return, but get something, man. Just get something if you're.
I'm excited about this. It's not, I just said it, it's not a great draft, but this is going to be a storyline that just, it keeps giving. There's so much to it. There's so many different angles. I think this is a great jumping off point for it. But we are in week 12 of college football.
Yes, we are.
and we just had another second rankings reveal. We do have the first year ever with the 12-team college football playoff bracket. Here's the projection. If you're watching this, you can see the projection here. That Boise State, Ohio State matchup is still sitting there 12-5. But let's get into this, my man, okay?
Yeah, let's do it.
I said it before, this is a historic day on the McShay Show. When you're sitting around talking to your grandchildren, 40 years from now, you can say, I was there. I liked, I subscribed, I downloaded. I was with them from the beginning, these two idiots that are co-hosting the McShay Show. I was there the first time they revealed this, okay? Right. This is the college football playoff championship confidence draft.
Can't wait.
And I love our producer, Connor. But could he have added any more words or C's to this? But I love it. I love it. He asked us right before we came on, you good with the wording on this? Yeah, I'm good with the college football playoff championship confidence draft. So how does this work? Mensch and I don't have a coin. Mensch, you pick first. Okay. I'm a good
All right.
host.
Nice.
You come to my house, I'm going to feed you. What cocktail can I make for you? I'm going to let you get first.
That
pick.
lines up nicely for me.
Great. We're going to go back and forth. Okay. You pick one, I pick two, you pick odds, I pick evens. We're going to go all the way down. Here's the only thing you have to know about this. Two things, I guess. The first is we're not picking based off of resume. This isn't strength of schedule. This isn't strength of resume. This isn't anything else besides confidence. Confidence in which teams can actually win the national championship. If you right now were able we go through a draft and say, all right, I want that team because I think that they have the best chance to win the national championship. Okay, then this has the second best chance, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And we're going to go down that way. And then in weeks following, what we're going to do is, it's a little bit like Russillo and I did the Heisman Trophy Eliminator, okay? He picked 3 players, I picked 3 players. Then we'll have opportunities in future weeks we're going to circle back on this and say, okay, here are my 6 teams that I picked, my confidence in them. Here are Mensch's 6 teams, the confidence he has in these teams to win the national championship. And we're going to say, all right, well, Tennessee's eliminated now, or whatever team is eliminated. And then we can trade in and out, and we can also restack them. Okay.
Right.
Restack them based off of what we're seeing. And it's not only what we're seeing, but also the situation they're in, who they're going to have to play. Is someone getting a 6 seed versus, a 2 seed and getting a bye in the first week. So with that as the backdrop, Mensch, and we'll rifle through this, but comment on each one and why you take them at this spot. With the first pick of the inaugural in 2024 college football playoff championship confidence draft. You knew it had to be a draft with you and I. Steve Mensch is on the clock. Go ahead.
No offense to Dan Lanning and the Ducks, but we're going the Ohio State Buckeyes. I just think,
really,
too talented. Talent everywhere. I feel like we've talked a lot on this show about where are the flaws on this team, and there's some flaws. We'll start with the flaw for Ohio State. The offensive line, some injuries up front. How are they going to continue to gel and play well? But I saw enough against Penn State to be excited about that. But look at the talent on that team. The running back talent, the receiver talent. They have playmakers everywhere. They have a defensive line where all 4 starters might get drafted. They might have the best secondary in the country. They might have the best defensive back in the country in Caleb Downs. Then you have Ryan Day. You have Chip Kelly calling your plays. They've been here before. They know how to handle this pressure. I think Ohio State's going to win out. I think Ohio State beats Oregon in the Big Ten championship game, and they will be crowned the national championships when it's all said and done.
Wow, Mensch. Fresh out the gate.
I love the Ducks, but I got to go Buckeyes.
I'm like Ozzie Newsome, right? Like my draft tactic is to sit back and let you make the mistake.
Oh, here we go.
And then I cash in on it. And I thought it was going to be at like the fourth or sixth pick, but it's coming at number 2. I'm taking Oregon. Yep. I believe in Dan Lanning. I believe in Will Stein, the offensive coordinator.
Right.
Young buck, great hire by Lanning. What he did with Bo Nix, what he's doing with Dylan Gabriel this year. I believe in Jordan James, the running back, most underrated running back in the country. I believe in their weapons. 4 deep at wide receiver. They're Ferguson at tight end. Defensively, playing good enough, playing good ball. I loved what I saw. I know it was a home game. I know it was a close game, but they did head-to-head beat Ohio State. I'm going to go with the Oregon Ducks, and I'll say this: preseason, and even more so after the first couple of weeks of watching them, I did not think I was going to be making this kind of statement.
Right.
I really didn't.
Yeah.
But now, you go back and you look at Boise State's a damn good football team. So, I get why that was close, and they probably got snuck up on a little bit in that game. But I'm going to go. So, with the first pick, it's Ohio State for Steve Mensch. The second pick is Oregon for myself. And now the third pick, Mensch. I think I know where you're going. Go ahead.
Oh, let's see. I love it. No idea that was coming. That's great.
Except when it's like pick 250 on a Saturday, then I just oof.
I'm interested to hear what your take on this one. I'm going Texas, man.
Yep.
I think Texas at 3. I actually struggle with Texas and Oregon. I think that's 1A and 1B. I mean, 2A and 2B to me. I look at Texas. That defense is so good. But Mensch, what about the Georgia game? I just don't. I think that's a blip. I think that Sark's going to get Ewers right enough that they correct that. I don't think they give up 9 sacks in a game again. I don't think that happens. That second quarter was an absolute nightmare for that program. I think they bounce back. I think they get right. I don't think people realize how good that defense is, man. It is. I mean, I think it's 12.6 points per game. I think I said that already. That defense is good. The corner, Jahdae Barron, love them. There's some dudes on that defense. And then, look, I just think they're going to be. When I look at top to bottom, I believe in Sark. I think that Ewers is going to get it right, and I love that defense. I'm going Texas at 3.
Okay, I like that pick. All right, pick number 4.
It's trickier here, right?
I drew a line. The top,
right?
I tier everything. I'm a tier guy.
Yeah, I know you're a tier guy.
Oregon, Texas, Ohio State were my top tier. Okay, so now we're in tier 2, in my opinion. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. You know, maybe it's just recency bias.
No.
Alabama.
Oh, all right. All right.
You thought Ole Miss.
I did. I thought Ole Miss.
That's coming soon. I'm going to take Alabama here because you asked the question why. I think their defense is good, not exceptional. It's not to the standard that we saw in some of those elite classes that we've talked about with Nick Saban. You know, with like 4 first-rounders and 9 guys in the top 100 and all that. But it's a really good defense. I love their linebackers. Absolutely love their linebackers. I think their defensive line is good and getting better. There's some holes to attack in the secondary at times. So I think that's concerning. But the reason I'm going to pick Alabama here is because I think they figured something out. And coming off of a bye week, and I mentioned 7-0. Kalen DeBoer against the elite coaches. I'm going to rattle this off my head. I hope I get it right. Kirby Smart, Brian Kelly, Sark, and Dan Lanning. 7-0 against those guys.
That means something, man.
That's a damn good
count for something.
It does.
Yeah.
And when I say they figured out something, the designed runs for Jalen Milroe, we were scratching our heads, right? Why isn't he aggressive in some games, Jalen Milroe, and he's more aggressive in others? They realized when they self-scouted that Jalen Milroe, he takes pride when you call his number. And he is the most aggressive version of himself as a runner when you call his number. Yeah. Not on scrambles. He's not not nearly as comfortable. So last week, it was 10 designed runs for 175 yards, Mensch.
Yeah.
And it was two scrambles for runs. I think it was the number for 10 yards, 2 or 3, whatever it was. So
strange. Yeah.
So I think that when we get into big moments, like they were in this past week, when they're in big moments, that's going to be the design. And until someone stops them, I've got a lot of confidence. So, all right. So we've got our picks so far. Mensch has got Ohio State, number 1, took Texas at 3. I've got Oregon at 2 and Alabama at 4. We're down to pick number 5 with Steve Mensch. Play me that music, that little jingle.
This is the one. This is the one where you're like, because, can I put my faith in Kiffin and Ole Miss? And I watched the tape. And when I watched the tape, I believe in this team. That defensive front is so good. They have a seasoned quarterback who can make some plays with his feet. I think really understands that offense. They're loaded at wide receiver. I mean, I think Ole Miss at 5 I don't, man, maybe it's because I've been watching that defensive line too much, but I just think I think that's fair. I think when you start looking at these other teams, you really start getting into, all right, they're no longer those teams. You're like, I definitely think this team's going to win the championship. So do I think the Ole Miss has the best shot of the teams left? I got to say I do.
I would have gone there, so I can't sit here and debate. All right, good pick. Good pick. This one might surprise you. Pick number 6.
Okay.
Technically this week, they're not even in the college football playoff.
Wow, here we
Coming
go.
off an ugly loss. I'm taking go Dogs. I'm taking Georgia. Because if they get in, I don't want to play them. And we're down to the 6. Excuse me. I see you, Indiana. I see you, BYU. I see you, Notre Dame. I see you, Miami. I see you, Penn State. We'll have to ask FanDuel. I want to know from FanDuel. We'll get into it Saturday night. We may have a different result depending on what happens in the game. But I'd be very interested in those teams I just rattled off. What would the spread be? Georgia, to me, would be favored in all of those games in a neutral site.
Yeah.
They got a lot to figure out. Like that offensive line struggled. And you know what? It wasn't just it wasn't just 1 week against Ole Miss. It just happened to be arguably the best defensive line in the country. They've got to get their pass protection figured out. Their weapons are not great on the outside, but it's still Georgia. That defense can. I go back to this. When we're talking confidence, for the sake of this argument, this is about confidence that if they get in and you match them up against the other teams in this tourney, if you will, look at that Texas game.
Yeah.
If that version can resurface, I like my chances picking him at number 6. So I'm going to go number 6, Georgia.
And their schedule's been outrageous. All right, we'll get into them a little bit later. And I am right. I mean, this is going to set up nicely for what we're going to talk about later. I'm going Tennessee. Again, these are the formula for me here is they can run the ball, and that defensive front is as deep as it gets. They had that blip against Arkansas. I don't like that they played so many home games. That kind of concerns me. But they had the blip against Arkansas, but they come back and they beat Alabama. Is Nico being inconsistent scare me? Yeah, but super talented, man. Super talented. And I look at that running game. I think Dylan Sampson is the truth. And I look at that defensive front. I love their scheme. I love their defensive scheme. And to me, this might be the year that the Vols make some noise.
I don't hate it. That's what I had him at 7 too.
Nice.
All right. Pick number 8. The pick is in. I'm going Notre Dame. I'm going Notre Dame because I just don't. I don't feel like I know enough, and maybe they're better than I thought. Maybe they just had one terrible game against Northern Illinois. Maybe
they just ran over Florida State, but they look so good doing it.
Riley Leonard seems like he's getting a little better. He's never going to beat you with his arm. Like they're going to have to manufacture a passing game, but he's mobile. That offensive line is good. The defense is really good. That secondary, even with the loss at corner, they're still outstanding. I don't know. I think when we get down to number 9, Notre Dame, I feel like it's hard to say Notre Dame in the program and the history,
right?
But I just don't feel like I know enough yet. But with that comes a little bit of intrigue and that makes them kind of dangerous. So I'm going to take Notre. If you tell me you get a Notre Dame at 9, I'm pretty happy. So my pick is number 9, Notre Dame. What do we got? We're down to pick 10.
Oh, it's getting tough, man. And if you think it's hard to pick Notre Dame, I'm going Penn State. I love the defensive front. Yeah. I mean, at this point, right? I'm going Penn State. I'm still terrified of their ability to win the big game. I love the tight end Tyler Warren. I think they've got talent at running back. I think they have that defensive front that can make some plays and really keep them in games. And maybe they figure it out this year. But at this point, when we're getting this deep in the draft, I think Penn State's solid.
All right. So Penn State was pick 9. Pick 10, I'm just gonna roll with it. I'm taking Indiana.
Yeah.
I'm taking Cignetti. I know Miami's got more talent. I know it, but just like every team we've talked about has more talent. I know A&M has more talent. Shit, I know South Carolina has more talent. But there's something about this bunch, man. The efficiency they play with, the confidence they play with, they know what's expected and they execute what's expected. So when we get down to pick 10, and yeah, they haven't played anybody. I get it. But they've annihilated everyone they've played.
Handled, yeah.
I mean, just no problem. And it doesn't, like Michigan should be a scary moment. We don't beat Michigan and Indiana. Nah. You know what I mean? Like they just,
it got a little tight. There was a point in that game where it teetered like, oh, here, this is the old Indiana is about to show itself.
But I never
won. They figured out to win.
There was the helmets were a factor. You know what I mean? It didn't matter who they were playing. It was, it was a game, and Michigan, poured its heart out, but Indiana was still better.
Right.
And we know Michigan is recruited better. We know Michigan has more NFL prospects. We know there's going to be 2 defensive tackles for Michigan that are going to go really early. Will Johnson did not play in that game, but we know Will Johnson's going to be a top 5, top 7 pick at cornerback. So, I don't know. I like, we got to throw some stuff against the wall here, but at pick number 10, I like Indiana. What do you got at 11, Mitch?
Really considered A&M. I did. I'm a little concerned about the quarterback situation, so I ended up going Miami. Give me Cam Ward. How far can he take that team? I think defensively, there's a lot of holes. I like their running back Martinez. I think they've got some playmakers at wide receiver. I think they're going to have to win some shootouts, to be honest with you. But give me Cam Ward.
All right, pick 12, and I don't disagree with that. At this point, pick 12. This may surprise you. Like, Boise State's a really good team. I'm excited to have them in. I love that matchup. But we get Ohio State versus Boise State, or Boise State versus any team that's probably going to be ranked third, or probably ranked third is going to wind up with that 5 seed because the Big 12 gets a spot and the ACC gets a spot. Okay, so the third best team in the country, according to the College Football Playoff rankings, when it's all said and done, is likely going to play Boise State, and I still think it's going to be intriguing. BYU is ranked high. BYU could be a 4 seed in this thing. 4 seed.
Yeah. I know.
If they take care of business, they could be a 4 seed.
Yeah.
I'm taking Texas A&M.
Okay. Yeah. No. I thought you were going to go the other direction.
And I'd be interested to hear what FanDuel has to say. That's another one. I'd like to see Georgia matched up against the rest of the field. I'd like to see A&M. I'd like to see A&M, and I'd like to see South Carolina. Neutral site versus BYU versus Boise State. What would that number be? Because I have a strong feeling that I would be on the right side of that in terms of what Vegas thinks.
Right.
But that's all right. So that's I love it. Hats
How did
off.
you get Georgia at 6? Now I'm already regretting it.
All right. So
Georgia
just
at 6.
A quick recap. Mensch with the number 1 pick took Ohio State. He had all the odd picks. So on Mensch's side is Ohio State, Texas, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Penn State, Miami. I picked at number 2 and had all the even picks. Oregon, Bama, Georgia, Notre Dame, Indiana, and Texas A&M. That was fun. I like that. And we'll revisit that. I think each week we'll come back and revisit that, see if we want to pluck a team out, maybe a BYU or a Boise State or another team we want to move them in, and we can restack them as we go so that when we get to the college football playoff, you and I will both have our 6 picks and we'll bet something out. You know what?
Yeah.
Anyone listening, anyone watching, something reasonable.
Yeah. No tattoos.
Yeah. Something reasonable, but I see a bunch of hysterical stuff for like guy lost his fantasy football draft and had to do this.
Have you heard the Waffle House thing?
So here we go. We got a good graphic right here. Anyone who's watching, it's the breakdown of Todd's teams versus Mensch's teams. What's the Waffle House thing, Mensch?
It's you got to stay in a Waffle House if you're losing your fantasy league, you got to stay in a Waffle House for 24 hours. But the catch is for every waffle you eat, they take off an hour. So if you can eat 8 waffles, it's only 16 hours.
How many? I feel like I could eat more waffles than you.
Maybe. I mean, but I think you're there bare minimum 18 hours.
How big are the waffles there?
I haven't been in a while, man.
The McShay Show is presented by FanDuel. Get out your game day gear this college football season on FanDuel, because right now, all customers get a profit boost every college football Saturday, every single Saturday. Listen, I'm never going to tell you which play you have to make on a college football Saturday, but I will let you know I was 6-1 last week in picks. I'm just saying. I'm kind of feeling it right now. And I look at this Georgia-Tennessee spread. It's the biggest game of the weekend. Georgia versus Tennessee, primetime game. Everything's on the line, especially for Georgia in this game. I think the Bulldogs giving 10.5 is the way you got to go. I think Vegas is begging you to take Tennessee. Sure, we'll take the higher-ranked team. You get 10 points with it. Don't be a sucker. I love Georgia in this game. And I'll tell you what, again, I'm never going to say exactly what you have to do, but the same game parlay is really intriguing to me in this one. I don't see where the points come from. Let's put it this way. I just believe this is going to be a low-scoring defensive battle. I think Georgia is absolutely the play. I wouldn't be surprised if we had an under as well. Boost your winnings on bets like spreads, over-unders, method of first touchdown, and so much more. Just visit FanDuel.com/McShay. That's FanDuel.com/McShay to download America's #1 sportsbook and kick off every college football Saturday with a boost. Must be 21 and older and present in select states or 18 and older and present in D.C. Opt-in required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable profit boost tokens. Restrictions apply, including any token expiration. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit rg-help.com. All right, a couple more things, few more things that we got to get to, Mitch. This has been a fun show so far.
Yeah, this has been awesome.
The biggest matchup in the SEC this week, the biggest matchup in the country this week, Saturday night, prime time, Herbie and Fowler back at it, coming off of last week's really disappointing matchup with LSU and Alabama. Not if you're an Alabama fan, but if you're a fan of college football, and we're looking for a great game, if you're on the McShay Show and you're waiting up to do a live show right after, and please join us again. We honestly, my favorite show that we do every week is the Saturday night instant reaction live show on YouTube. Like, just come join us, check it out. You may not agree with all the things we're saying. You may disagree, but that can be fun too. But we dive into the biggest game and then the other key games in the action from that day. But this week, again, primetime SEC, like, I love it. I just love between the hedges, night game. Yeah. Everything's on the line. Georgia loses. People keep saying, well, they could get in with 3 losses. Yeah, they could, but it ain't likely. Tennessee needs this win. Backs against the wall. This is a huge game. So let's break this down for a minute, and then we'll get into FanDuel and what we're looking at here. I'm kind of on a hot streak right now, Mitch.
You're scaring me.
6-1 and won my pool of like 50 different people last week. Okay.
Let's go.
And I feel strongly about this game. We'll get to that.
I know you do. We're going to get into it.
Strongly. I think you're a sucker. All right.
Not just for this, but yeah.
Georgia, Tennessee. Couple things. Let's start with Georgia's offense versus Tennessee defense. What stands out? Georgia's offensive line. A lot of numbers depending, you can go to a lot of different places, get different statistics, analytics, numbers. This offensive line for Georgia, and I'm going off of some of the stuff that you've said, obviously going off of my tape study. This offensive line has not been as good as maybe the numbers stacked up to be. I think that Georgia's done a good job kind of protecting this offensive line, but with quick passes, quick game screens, they don't have receivers who are running verticals. There's not a lot of the traditional, what you would call 7-step drops or, working the ball vertically down the field, deep intermediate stuff. And when they have, it's been a little bit of a struggle, and Carson Beck has been under pressure. But they were able to mask it and hide it for a long time. I felt like there's no masking, running away, hiding from the Ole Miss defensive line. There isn't. And so we saw it get exposed last week. Lowest pass, if you go, PFF, lowest pass blocking grade of the season. But again, I think that the Georgia offensive line has struggled. That was the best defensive line I think you and I could argue in the country. I would argue the second best defensive line, or the one I fear the most, is the Tennessee defensive front. The difference is
get a whole lot easier.
You're going to have more guys drafted. We talked about those front 4. We gave you the graphic of the 4 guys on the defensive line who are going to be drafted and are all in the top 10 of their respective positions. This defensive front, yes, you've got the big name, James Pierce Jr., doesn't have elite sack numbers, but his pressure rate is number one among all FBS defenders. Okay,
right.
You got Omar Norman Lott. He's a terror as well. And the thing that's different with this group, you're not going to hear Tennessee defensive linemen get drafted as frequently in the first 2 days of the NFL draft. But the difference between this group and Ole Miss is I think this group is deeper.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay.
I mean, I'm watching the tape and I'm like, who is this? Who is this defensive tackle? They play 6 defensive tackles, and they can play 6 defensive tackles because there's no drop off. And the top 3, when you're talking about Omari Thomas, you're talking about Bryson Eason, and you're talking about Omar Norman Lott. These guys are difference makers when they're on the field. I mean, they are tough to run on. They can get pushed up the middle. So when I'm watching the tape and I'm looking at my depth chart and I'm like, who's this guy? Now this guy is making plays. So the depth is outrageous. I do think, I don't know how much you want to get into it right now. The depth at edge isn't quite as good, but it's still really good. So yeah.
So Georgia, to me, they're going to have to run the football. They're going to have to create some good play action situations. The thing that and we've touched on it, I'm not going to beat a dead horse. The weapons just aren't different. They lost a couple guys early in the season. Remember, Georgia did at wide receiver, in addition to obviously what we've talked a lot about, losing an elite tight end, losing an elite wide receiver and Ladd McConkey, and losing them to the NFL draft. And so now you're down like your 4 best weapons from 2 that you were supposed to have coming into the season and 2 from a year ago. And we've seen the absolute impact on this offense for Georgia. They're not separating quickly enough. That's what I see on tape. They're just not separating quickly enough. I think Delp, there's been a lack of trust there. Yep. And also the thing that Georgia's always had is yak guys, yards after catch. And when you have an offensive line that's not protecting well, and you got a quarterback that's got to get the ball out, what do you need? You need receivers that can create screen game, quick game, right? They're not doing that.
Right.
And so something's kind of got to give here. You got a great Georgia defense, an elite a really good, let's say, Tennessee defense. I would say great.
I think it's great.
Football, standard. It's
one of the best in the country, but I think
an elite, one of the top 2, we said, defensive lines. So what is Georgia going to do? Can they run on this front? Were you talking about all that depth at defensive tackle? They're rotating in like hockey lines, like hockey shifts. I don't know.
Listen, I got to tell you, and maybe it's because I watched the Alabama game recently. Defense coordinator Tim Banks doesn't get enough credit for what he does, man. And he has 2 guys on the outside in James Pierce and Joshua Josephs who are elite in terms of versatility. And so he can do these multiple fronts, and he can drop guys. He brings pressure. It looks like I'm bringing pressure over here. Nope, I'm dropping a guy. I'm bringing pressure over here. We talk about some of the things that Carson Beck has had a hard time seeing. This is going to be a challenge for him as well. You want, again, this is the thing about the James Pierces of the world. If you see that guy coming off the edge, you would better account for him protection-wise. But now when you account for him, the numbers are off. When you drop, more guys got to win one-on-one. You might get a free runner. You got to make a quick decision. The guy you thought was your hot has a linebacker dropping underneath him. It is difficult to play against that defense. And I'll also say one thing that really jumps out to me about when I watch their tape, take away the scheme, take away the talent. These dudes rally to the football. I've been impressed with how they rally to the ball. Missed tackle, no problem. Here comes the next layer. Guys are flying. And part of that is, again, we're so deep. You're going to be fresh when you're on the field, man.
Give me 25, give me 30. You don't have to give me 60.
All out. Right. Empty the tank now, man, because don't worry about it. We got another guy who can come in when you need a break. So, I mean, I'm concerned about. And again, I don't know how you want to handle the injuries in this game, but Georgia's banged up at running back. I mean, they're potentially going to have to lean on Frazier, who is you don't get carries at Georgia as a freshman if you're that talented.
No, he's an absolute stud, but he's got to protect the football.
Can he hold on to the football in this game?
He was losing carries early in the season because of fumbles that Kirby Smart said in practice as well that scared him. And then they got to a point with ETN, and he's been dinged up since the Texas game, right, where he had 3 touchdowns, I think it was.
Yeah.
So they've got him very clearly on a pitch count. And so how effective is Etienne going to be in this
Jones
game?
has been a good receiver out of the backfield. He's hurt too. Like he's banged up. Frazier hasn't played a big role in the passing game. Can he step it up there? I mean, listen, this looks like a low scoring game to me. Tell me if you think I'm wrong, but it looks like a low scoring game to me. I think it's going to be a real defensive battle.
We'll get to that in a minute, Mitch.
Yeah,
we'll get to. So this is a resume if you're watching for Georgia. Obviously, the Alabama, the one loss, the Texas win is the signature win, and you just look at. I think we have Ole Miss there as a win that should be an L. So the one loss early to Alabama and the loss there for Ole Miss. And then after this, it's UMass and Georgia Tech. So this is the game for Georgia. This will decide whether they're in the college football playoff or if they're absolutely sweating it out in the end. Let's flip the sides, okay? Tennessee on offense. And I agree. Like Georgia's gonna have to run the ball, manufacture stuff, be smart on offense, and limit mistakes and kind of grind their way on the offensive side. Because defensively, I think Georgia, like this could be a bloodbath.
Yeah.
And you don't often say that when you talk about Heupel and you talk about this offense for Tennessee. The first thing we have to address is that Nico Iamaleava.
Yeah.
What's our situation here? Banged his head against Mississippi State, came out of the game. Gaston Moore came in, was 5 of 8 passing in that game. But Nico now this week, what report do you believe? That no one has officially said that he's in concussion protocol. There's been a lot of reports.
I hate this stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, like kid gloves, stand back. Like I don't know. Let's just say officially, I don't know what it is. Been a lot of reports that it most likely is that he's in concussion protocol. And every human being is different with concussions. Like you don't know when you're gonna, how you're gonna react and how long that's gonna take. So and we had Coach Heupel come out and said he's looked great in practice. We don't know, like, is he playing? Is this gamesmanship? Is this like be prepared for
what are we doing
Nico?
here? Yeah.
But we're bringing in Gaston. Like, that obviously is the biggest story heading into this game.
Changes everything.
Let's just assume for this sake right now, Nico's able to play.
Right.
Okay. Let's just assume that, because if not, we know what the result is.
We do.
Like I'm sorry, Gaston Moore, but it doesn't take more than 8 passes against Mississippi State and that one interception, I think, in the only pass he attempted against Alabama for me to realize, like, we're talking a massive. There's a reason why a true freshman's starting, and because he's super talented. But also, if it was anywhere close, you'd probably go with the veteran guy and help develop the true freshman and put him in spots and all of that. So against this Georgia defense at home, night game for the Bulldogs, between the hedges. Like, if it's not Nico, none of this conversation matters. So let's go to Nico. And I did it. We've talked a lot about Nico this year.
Mm-hmm.
Looked great early on, had some regression, which I don't think necessarily is all Nico. I think, quite honestly, I don't think this offensive line's great for Tennessee. Okay. That's one thing to keep in mind.
Better run blockers than pass blockers.
Beat me to it. I totally agree. Pass protection. I think those tackles are vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And when you got Mykel Williams and Jalen Walker, two of the most explosive edge rushers in all of college football, it's not a happy place to be if you're Heupel designing a game plan this week, okay, with those offensive tackles. So let's keep that in mind. But where is Nico? And that's the question I wrote to myself before I started watching the tape. And we've talked about him a lot. Game feels like it's too fast for him holding on to the ball sometimes too much, running outside, just not playing within the construct, within the structure of the offense. But also the thing that just jumps out to me every week, it's almost like Heupel should just, like, the very first play of the game, let's run a vertical and let's let him overthrow it.
Right. Get it out.
Right. Get it out. Mississippi State. I think it was his first throw. It was the third play of the game. It was his first throw because the first 2 plays were runs. One was bottled up. The other one was pretty successful. Third play of the game. You got a receiver running wide open. It's Brew McCoy, right? Number 5. Not only does he overshoot him, he throws it out of the back of the end zone.
Right.
So, like, not only was it like very little chance, like even if Brew caught up,
no shot.
He was out of bounds. It gave him 0 chance. Okay, but Mississippi State, I haven't watched much of their defense this year. Like, they're not in the college football playoff race. They don't have a lot of prospects. We'll get to one or two guys later. I don't know if they've played like this all year long, but Mississippi State's defense was putrid in this game. Like, not like guys aren't like open by 2 yards.
Don't hold back, man.
I know, but a few plays later, Squirrel, number 3, Squirrel White is running like another like 7-10 yards open, you know. So then he gets a second shot, but he got the first one out of his system, and he connects on this one.
Right.
So, but there are 2 points here. First of all, like, how many can you afford to miss in this game against this competition? And secondly, maybe you get one breakdown. That was in the first like 8 plays of the game. He had 2 receivers open by 7-8 yards.
Right.
Maybe one time you get a communication breakdown or something happen. Guy trips for Georgia. There's not going to be a lot of open receivers like this, like what we saw last week.
I agree with you. The margin of error is smaller, but if we just talked about the other side of the ball and Georgia, let's play it out. Let's say that Georgia has some hard times putting points on the board. You don't need that many, man. I mean, you hit a couple of those deep shots, and this is a 21-17 game, man. You don't need a ton. You don't need a lot. I'm just saying. I get what you're saying. The margin of error is smaller, but
we'll get to why you're a sucker in a little bit. So I worry about Nico's natural touch and placement right now. You know, he's super talented. He's going to be a phenomenal one. True freshman year, all the pressure, but he's not progressing the way I was hoping to see. And like, this should be a game. I don't know. We'll see, but it's a big spot, and hopefully he's healthy enough to play, and hopefully he plays great. And we have an all-timer on Saturday night.
It's fun to watch, man.
But like, realistically, what is this game going to come down to? For Tennessee offensively, it's Deion Sampson. I mean, the run game has been Tennessee's savior all season long. Sampson's rushed for 1,126 yards so far.
He's a dude.
And his 20 rushing touchdowns ranks second nationally, only behind, you guessed it, Ashton Ginty. So like, I know it's not record setting, but my goodness, is this guy on a clip. But what I did get to study on this, and I credit Pro Football Focus for this. They're really helpful with certain things that I rely on. Very average, Tennessee's run game has been. Very average against Power 4 conferences running the football. 1.6 yards before contact, according to PFF. That's not a lot. No, and not many explosive runs. So for a guy who's rushed for over 1,100 yards and for a run game that's been so successful, there's been a lot of, rolling out some stats against programs that aren't great. So that's something to keep in mind. Keep your eye on and enter Georgia's defense. As I said, night game, crowd behind it, energy. Michael Williams, Jalen Walker, top 10, top 15 picks in the draft. Chaz Chambliss, Nazir Stackhouse, Malachi Starks, first safety off the board in the 2025 NFL draft. Like, this defense has dudes. And the run defense, if you say, like, what's the one thing Georgia can rely on? What's the one thing Georgia has done great all season long? Stopping the run.
Yeah.
So you take away Sampson and put this game on Nico, or put this game on Gaston Moore. Like, I hear you. Georgia's not going to put up major numbers in this game, but where's the offense come from for Tennessee?
Yeah. I mean, look, I hear you. Like I said, I think this is a low scoring game. I have no illusions of Tennessee going and put up 28 or 31 against Georgia in Athens. Like, I don't see that happening. I think their path to success is you ride Deion Sampson, who has 20 plus carries and all but 2 games this year. I wouldn't be surprised if he had a season high in carries this week. I wouldn't be surprised if they gave him 35 if they had to. And some of it is you hope that you don't need the big plays, right? You're looking to control the clock. You're looking to wear out that Georgia front. If you can, you're looking to wear out that Georgia front. And, I have a lot of faith in Sampson. I think he's such a tough runner who's going to get everything that he can get on every carry. So I think that's their formula. I would be stunned if they put up more than 24, 28 points in this game. I think 28 is too high.
All right. You know, our friends at FanDuel, right? And I just pulled up their app, and what I love is there's just so many different ways. And this isn't an ad, like they haven't asked me to do this, but I love going through their app and going through all the different things that they have, the trends that they have. They help, they help put things in perspective for us. Very helpful with all the lines. What I love to do is like same game parlay. Hear me out on this.
I'm a sucker for the parlays.
I don't get the Tommy John surgery much for patting myself on the back, but I'm 6-1 last week, man. So, like when you start
this show's like changing into a different show in front of
no, just for a minute, just for a minute, just for a minute,
right.
just for a minute.
Indulge.
Okay? But when you get hot, you got to ride it. You got to when you're at the craps table, when you're playing poker, roulette. Like when you're starting, you better run with it now. And
right.
You better stick your foot on Vegas's throat when you get a chance, because they'll do it to you the rest of the year. So I'm feeling it right now.
Okay.
Here's what I want you to know. Like, we watch all this tape. We talk to contacts. We know injury report. We have all this information. But like at the end of the day, when I start winning, when I'm picking games, it's because I'm beating Vegas at its own game.
Yeah.
Vegas, they're self-proclaimed. They love being that little devil on your shoulder, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they're like begging you, come on, take all these points, take the candy, right? Take the sweets. Right. They are begging you. And don't listen to me, public. Listen to me. So Vegas is just begging you, pleading with you to take Tennessee here. The spread's 10.5. Tennessee's a higher ranked team. Tennessee's only got one loss, right?
10.5. Wow.
Begging you to take 10. Here, hey, Tennessee's ranked 6th. Georgia's ranked 11th. Tennessee, Tennessee only has to lose by 10 points and you still win. Get out of here, Vegas. Get out of here. Don't be a sucker like Mensch. Let's win some money this week. Take Georgia on tape. No, I don't necessarily see it. I don't know where the points are coming from. I don't. But I know this. I know this. When we go on live on YouTube Saturday night, it's going to be around 11:30. Whenever that primetime game's over, I'm going to be like this.
I know.
And you're going to be like,
I'm going to have the hoodie on.
They just kicked the field goal at the end. So that's what's going to happen here. And listen, same game parlay. I'm not here to tell you what to pick or what not to pick. There's a million different ways that you can bet this game. You get I'm looking right now on the FanDuel app, right? We get the alternate lines. We get the Georgia point total points, Tennessee total points. You can do first quarter, first half, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, like any way you want this. But I'm just saying, if you're considering a same game parlay, and maybe I'm a sucker here, but like the under 48.5, I just don't know how they get to 49, these two teams.
Yeah, I just don't.
I'm much hotter on, I think Georgia's going to run away with this thing. But I think like keep that in mind as you're going through all, FanDuel, ripping through your app and figuring out what you want to do. I just don't see a ton of points in this game.
How about these numbers? Georgia 7-1 against Tennessee since 2016. The loss was in 2016. I think they have a 28-game winning streak at home. But Kirby doesn't lose after a loss. I mean, he always bounces back.
Kirby owns this defense. Think back to 2022, 2 years ago, right? UT was rolling. They won 11 games that year. They had only lost one. They were undefeated playing against Georgia. They're Tennessee's. Remember, that's Hendon Hooker. This
is a different Tennessee, which is what I'm saying now.
They're stomping you with 50 or 60 every week. If you take out the Georgia game, they averaged almost a half a hunch on every other team. 49 points per game in the 12 other games. I looked this up yesterday. You know what Georgia did? No, that's cute. Come on in, Hype.
Yeah.
Come on in, Hendon. Come on in, Jalen. 13 points they were held to. Handed the Vols the first of only 2 losses that year. So that's it. I say, hey.
I hear you. It is a strong point.
When you lose, say little. When you win, say less. Tennessee, I can't promise that will be the case on Saturday night. All right. We got that game down. All right. Every week, we got our staples here. That's my guy. Where are the scouts this weekend? And where would Todd be this weekend? We're going to have to rip through this. We've already gone way too long, but that's fine. Mensch.
Yeah.
That's my guy. Who is it this week? We're going to cut it down. We've been doing 2 each week. By the end of the draft, if we kept up this breakneck pace, basically every single guy would be our guy, and that's just not an accurate. It's not really an accurate, picture of what this thing is all about. So we're gonna knock it down to one guy. But who's your guy this week that you've loved watching on tape that you're kind of planting your flag with?
Bowling Green tight end Harold Fannin Jr. And this guy's been getting a lot of buzz.
Yeah,
he's been.
Okay, I haven't done his tape yet, so tell me. Enlighten me.
I don't want to act like breaking news that this guy is going to be a good tight end prospect because it's been out there, but I am firmly on the bandwagon. Listen to this: 11 catches, 137 yards against Penn State.
Ooh,
goes into Texas A&M the next week, 8 for 145 and another touchdown. I mean, the kid's putting up numbers. He is by far.
I didn't realize that.
I think he's 4th in the country in average yards per game, receiving yards per game. And like the next tight end isn't even close. I mean, he's been super productive. And when you throw on the Penn State tape, it's like the first play of the game. He runs down the seam. He's got a corner closing on him. He's got a safety closing on him. No problem. Snatches it out of the air. This guy is productive after the catch. He runs hard, could sneaky make that first defender miss. I think there's some detail-oriented stuff he can do with his route running, but has all the tools to be an above-average route runner. One concern is he's built like Brock Bowers. And he's not, there's not a lot of tight ends that are Brock Bowers. I'd like to see him put on about 10 pounds. The game, when you look at it, reminds me of Jonnu Smith, the tight end from Miami, who was with Atlanta. He was with New England. I think he's a guy that can really make plays with the ball in his hand. He can make plays down the field. So if you're looking in terms of what his game looks like, that would be the best comp for me.
What would you say in terms of the tight end class? I mean, we know about Tyler Warren, Penn State. We know about Colston Loveland, Michigan. Mason Taylor, LSU.
Gunnar Helm, Texas.
Gunnar Helm is 4 on my list right now. Terrence Ferguson is really rising. Where do you, if those guys are the guys that we know for pretty, I don't want to say for sure, but we feel really good about it. Like by the end of day 2, they should all be off the board. Where are you going here?
I think he has a chance to be a top 5 tight end. I have him in the middle rounds right now. I think we'll see how well he tests and how big he is. Those are my concerns. Because when you start breaking it down, there's not a lot of guys sub 240 tight ends. And he's listed at 230.
Yeah.
So my concern is I love this tape. I love how well he plays. And then we get to Indianapolis and he weighs 225 and he's a big slot receiver instead of a tight end.
I hear
But if he tests well, then I think he's a day 2 pick, and he's a top 5 tight end in this class.
All right, that's my guy this week for me is Cam Skattebo, running back, Arizona State.
Yep,
5'11", 215. I've got him in the top 10 running backs, and this is an absolutely loaded running back class.
Wow.
He's moved. I like him. 8 games this season, missed last week. Okay. 8 games this season, 1,001 rushing yards, 5.8 yards per carry. 11 touchdowns, okay? I'm not big on the stats, but the production is there, over 1,000 rushing yards in just 8 games.
Right.
Also averaging 15 yards on 27 catches, okay?
Yeah.
So I talked to a scout last Thursday he's like, make sure you watch Skattebo. Make sure to me, he's like, going through the country, he's a guy that's really rising. I love he saw our show where I talked about Jordan James. Okay.
Yeah.
He's like, I agree. He's like, maybe not the most underrated, but one of the most underrated running backs in the class. Really like James. So he's like, but another guy you got to, just study him, because coming into the year with all these other running backs, he was not on my list of guys to evaluate. So I popped in the tape this week. He didn't play last week. He had the injury against UCF, I think it was.
Okay.
But this is a huge game this week. Arizona State versus Kansas State, both 7-2 teams. Arizona State's kind of like flying under the radar.
There are a couple teams like that, right? Yeah.
Right. So questionable with the injury, is out a week, but he was back in practice on Wednesday, so he's expected to play in that game. I really dying to see him in that game. So from an evaluation standpoint, not a burner, but he hits the hole hard. Those backs, like he reaches top level fast. His top speed is probably going to be like 4.55. It's not a 4.4 guy. But But he reaches that top level and he hits the hole hard, but he also has great vision.
Right.
And so like guys who can hit it hard, but also sense where to make the cut. Got a great jump cut as a runner, excellent vision. As I said, contact balance is really good. And he's just a consistent grinder of a runner. Catches the ball well, been productive in that department, also tough pass protection. So I don't think you're getting a starting back necessarily, like your number one. We're not talking about Derrick Henry, not talking about Christian McCaffrey. Those are we could talk Ashton Ginty how great is he going to be? He's not that. But I think in a rotation, which a lot of NFL teams use, I think he can be very, very productive and successful in the next level. So to me, he's probably these running backs, the run on running backs. Ginty will go in the first round. We'll see a few in the second. I think the run on running backs will be rounds 3 through 5. I think, if he doesn't go in late day 2, he's going to go early day 3.
Love it. Right. I had not heard about him. That's what I love about this. And I love that you got it from a conversation from someone else. That's the best. It's honestly the best way to find players. And it's so exciting when you're like, wow, this is,
you have that conversation, then you shoot a text back like, I do like him, or it's like,
Especially when you get into, there's not as many of these guys when you get later in the process, but you know how it is when you're in the middle of January, the sun goes down at about 1:30 in the afternoon, and you're sitting there and you've watched the 7th, 5th round pick in a row, and someone's like, dude, check out this guy, and you're like, oh my god, this is awesome,
yes.
you get excited about a guy,
you get a little kick in the ass, right?
Yeah, it's awesome.
All right, so those are two. That's my guys. Let's just rip through where are the scouts this week. I think Tennessee, Georgia's an obvious one.
No-brainer, yeah.
Clemson, Pitt. I'm interested to see what Clemson is, but and Pitt, obviously, I think that's a game that scouts will be at. It's central location. I think there will be a decent amount there. How about Missouri, South Carolina? I think that's another one.
Yeah. South Carolina, we've talked about this. They've got dudes on defense, man. They're must see defense. So, and then Missouri, again, it comes back to me for Bird in the third. Like, I just keep waiting for that breakout game, man. He's talented. I just want to see that breakout game. And maybe I didn't check recently, but I still don't think he's had that monster performance that I've expected this year. Yeah,
I think Arkansas, Tennessee is another one. Arkansas, Texas is another one where we could see a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, all right. So that's where we think the scouts will be this week. Where would Todd be this weekend, though?
This is your favorite thing every week, man.
I know. I'm sorry. I take over the podcast.
No, it's great. No, it's fine. It's great.
I get excited about it. When you're on the road as much as I was for for 20 years.
You've earned it.
Leave on Thursdays, come back on Sundays. I can't stand when you're traveling with a group of people and they just want to go to the same place. We're in Cincinnati. Let's go to Skyline Chili. No, go bleep yourself. I'm not going to Skyline Chili. No offense. I hope they're not a sponsor or something. But let's make this special. Like, let's get played somewhere where we can break bread. We can do this the right way. We can find something unique. Find something that that the locals are proud of.
Right.
And have that and know that you can come back to it and make friendships. And so there's a special pride. So talk to a bunch of people, folks in Athens. Talk to David Pollock is one of them, who, by the way, I love you, Dave. I do. He eats so healthy that I was concerned.
Yeah. Right. What are we doing here?
But if you're staying in Athens, I think it's one of the Hyatts or something. It's the most popular place. Check out the Abacus Hotel. I'm a big boutique guy.
I know, man. I know.
You know me. Everywhere we go, I try to find someplace. It's a little bit more interesting. There's a history to it. It's a little off the beaten path. You're not in the elevators with either 1,000 fans or a bunch of scouts. Something a little off the beaten path. Abacus Hotel, really cool music venue too there. Okay, so if you're going down to Athens, stay at the Abacus if you can get in there. The Foundry is inside the hotel. Yeah. Live music there, restaurant, some cocktails, do your thing, whatever your thing is. But it's just kind of a cool, different spot than your average, mainstream hotel. You got to check out the dog walk when you're there. I didn't working games. I didn't have an opportunity, but been there, have seen it, have driven, by and around it. But that's a special deal. Tailgating there, the dog walk. Everyone's coming into the stadium, the players, just like what you would expect, the tradition, the atmosphere, the vibe, the feel. But you know my specialty, Mensch.
I do.
It's Friday nights, right? It's Friday night fare. We got one night. Let's go out. Let's be responsible on Friday night, but let's have a hell of a time. Okay. It's all about, like I said, breaking bread, great people, special environment, get to know the people there, the locals, telling stories, the history. And I'm not going to let you down. Once again, this is week 3 of this.
You haven't yet.
We gave you Acre 2 weeks ago in Auburn, special place. Last week, Baton Rouge. I mean, Brandon Landry, walk-ons, supper club, just outlining an amazing trip. Like if you're going to Baton Rouge and you're going to have a weekend with friends, family, whatever it is, and you want to have like a bucket list trip, go check out the Baton Rouge breakdown we did last week. But this week, this is a special, close to my heart, Mensch, okay? We're going to highlight Chuck's Fish. Chuck's Fish. Let's start with a little history lesson here. You ready?
Yeah.
You're going to learn when you're on the college football trail, when you're out there every week, that there's tremendous history and there's pride in every place where you go. Each place has something different to offer. And everyone wants to tell you a story. And when you're in your 20s and you're going, you're kind of annoyed. You're like, where's the food? I don't care. Right? Then you get in your 30s and you're like, this is interesting. And then you start to get a little older and you're like, I need this. This is so special, so cool, right. So unique. All of these places, not just in the Southeast, but out west. Out in the mountains, in the Midwest, like every place has a special story, and there are special places in all of these places. And Chuck's Fish is one of those places. Okay. Chuck Morgan, follow me here. Okay. Chuck Morgan came to national prominence in 1963, the day after the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham. And if you're looking and watching this online, on the left-hand side, you'll see Chuck Morgan right there with that huge fish. So he delivered a speech after the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing in Birmingham, Alabama. Delivered a speech that was critical of the state of race relations in the South. His career as a civil rights attorney has been well documented, right? During extremely turbulent times in the 1960s. He went on to try 9 cases before the United States Supreme Court. Many of these were landmarks in the struggle for racial equality. I mean, how cool is this, right? What he did, the impact he had. This restaurant, Chuck's Fish, is named in his honor. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, okay? 1979, our guy right here, Chuck Morgan, founded Harbor Docks. Anyone who spent any time in Destin, Florida, the Destin Harbor is a famous restaurant and bar down in Destin. Chuck was also a frequent patron of Sakura's Sushi Bar, where he initially met this woman named Yoshi Eddings. And she has an unbelievable story too. Dates back to her days in Tokyo growing up. She was born and raised in Tokyo, came over to the United States with her husband, who was a photojournalist in the Air Force. And their son, Chris, who I've gotten to know, become friends with over the years, and basically making my second home down in the South on the college football circuit. And just follow me here. Okay. So we've got Yoshi Eddings, her husband, who's in the United States Air Force, and we've got their son, Chris. Ultimately, Yoshi joined Chuck. So Chuck just goes in. He likes the sushi place. He loves food. He sees that Yoshi's making this unbelievable sushi, right? And so eventually, Yoshi joins Chuck at his restaurant, Harbor Docks, and starts working there, okay? In 1991, they started working together, brought her over, saw a special talent, saw a special person with a great backstory, brings her in. Chris was 15 years old at the time, Chris Eddings. He began bussing tables. That's where his love and passion and just being around restaurants began. Fast forward to 2005, okay? He goes off to college. He tries to do some business stuff, and Chuck's like, come back. And his son, Chuck Morgan's son, Charles Morgan III, had an idea for opening a restaurant that would showcase the best seafood from the Gulf of Mexico.
Love that.
Both with a Southern flair and also impeccable sushi, right?
Right.
So a year later, Chuck's Fish opens up in downtown Tuscaloosa. That's the first Chuck's Fish I ever went to, okay? First time I met Chris Eddings. And you guessed it, Yoshi's making the sushi, and her son, Chris, my bud, becomes a managing partner. You see Chris and his mother Yoshi, who I had the pleasure of meeting, actually in Mobile, Alabama. I think you and I actually went to the Chuck's Fish in Mobile, Mensch, but I met Yoshi in Mobile. I first met Chris in Tuscaloosa. Then I hooked back up with Chris and met his mom Yoshi in Mobile. So in 2009, they opened up the location in Birmingham after the Tuscaloosa one in 2005, followed by Mobile, Alabama, where I think we've eaten there together, Mensch. And then most recently in 2019, they opened a location in Athens, Georgia. So now in 2024, when deciding to make a trip to Athens or to Tuscaloosa or to Mobile or to any of these locations, Tallahassee as well, they have one. Okay. You gotta stop by Chuck's Fish. You now know the history. You now know the passion. You now know what Chuck did, and his impact on racial equality in the South. You now know that he finds this woman who's doing unbelievable stuff making sushi, brings her in. They open up, and his son, Charles Morgan III, opens up these restaurants, and it's a must stop. Yeah. When I was texting with Pollock, I was like, give me some other places. Like, is there anything new? I haven't been back in a few years. The first place he said, got to be Chuck's, right? Like we both know Chuck's is the place to go. So it's not just a great restaurant. It's not just a great story. It's a destination. Like, get there early, sit down at the bar, get to know the people there. Chris doesn't spend, I don't think, as much time in the Athens one as some of the others, but let people know, Chris, the backstory, the Morgan family story. And I'm sure they will, like everywhere in the SEC, and especially places like Athens and Baton Rouge, we talked about Auburn, they'll welcome you with open arms. And a side note, just to bring it all full circle, Pollock told me yesterday that Kirby Smart is also a part owner in the Chuck's Fish in Athens.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's kind of the tie with football and all of that. And don't let the visor and the yelling and screaming on the sideline throw you off here. Kirby knows his fine food. He knows what he's doing. So let's check out do we have the menu? Oh, there we go. I'm telling you, like, their sushi is phenomenal. It's I always get in trouble with these places because I have to try the sushi. And like Yoshi's sushi is just unbelievable. And you see all the different rolls there, right? Yep. But then you're like, how many sushi rolls can I put down? Like the rock and roll sushi. How many can I put down while I still need to get into the appetizers? Yeah. Like the seafood gyoza, right? It's like the pot stickers, so good. The kimchi Brussels, I think I remember the Brussels are so ridiculous. And then, what they do best is their seafood, so it's a Gulf. You got the grilled Gulf fish of the day. Like their fish of the day, the way they do it. I love stuffed shrimp, but you can't, I don't know. Can you limit yourself to that when you have all these different special? Right. The sesame seared tuna. Oh, what would you pick here, Mensch? Where would you go?
I'd probably go with the tuna, man. Yeah. That's right up my alley. And again, it would be the same thing. This is the kind of place that looks like you could eat 5 nights in a row, have 5 different meals, and just have the time of your life every night.
Let me give you a couple places because obviously I love Chris. His mother's a beautiful, wonderful person. Yoshi Eddings. I think what Chuck has done, what he did, and his son now, Charles Morgan III. It's an amazing story. But when you're in Athens, you can't just eat at one place, right? You could, but a couple other places. The National for lunch. Check it out. Like cool vibe in there. Very different, from like what you're used to seeing maybe on a college campus, college area. The National is a cool spot. Really good food. Paloma Park when you're in Athens, okay? Good place to go watch games, have some cocktails, atmosphere, okay? Tons of screens inside. I remember there's tons of screens inside, but it's also one of those indoor-outdoor deals, right? Where they've got huge jumbo. You think about game day, right? Like before you go over the tailgate, you want to have the atmosphere. You want to feel a part of the whole thing. You want to watch other games. We got the big noon kick, right? Like this is a great place to do that. Beer garden outside, big jumbotron, like picnic table setup. It's just kind of a fun, open vibe. Yeah. So it's our kind of place, Mitch. It's totally our kind of place. And then everywhere I go, you've got to have a late night joint because who knows what's going to happen, whether you're working late on the game, whether you're, indulging yourself all day and you got to kind of absorb it before you go to bed. Little Italy Pizzeria is the place for you. They stay open late. It's, whew. That's my favorite part of the show every week. I'm sorry.
I just love the people you bring into it, man. I love it. The restaurants have been great, and the food's great. All of it's great. But I love that you're tying in these people, man, because that's what it's all about. College football is a huge community, and
it is.
That's the stuff to me. And maybe it's because I'm older, right? Maybe when I was 20, I was like, okay, all right, enough.
Yeah, where's my appetite?
When I'm in life, that stuff is fascinating to me. So.
Yeah, I have a great appreciation for it now. And that wasn't always the case, but great appreciation for it. And I'm telling there's special, when we get out to a USC game at some point, I literally close friends now that I met while on the college football tour who run a restaurant. You know what I mean? The amount of friends that I've developed and the relationships I have over the years. That's why you gotta, I told you the question I get asked more have been anything else. Who's your biggest fail as an evaluation? Who's the biggest bust that you thought was going to be, all that stuff. The question I get asked the most over the years is always, bucket list, where would you go? Right. And where are the places that we have to go? Or my friends, we've done 3 different college football trips. My friends, give me another place. And the list goes on. And these people and these places are the reasons why there's just so much passion for it. And literally we'll do this for a couple of years and we'll stack all these different places, all these different restaurants, all the people, and hopefully come up with a really good menu for people when they're going to try to make a trip somewhere special and do a bucket list type of trip. They'll at least have an initial guide and a jumping off point of where to go. So appreciate you sticking with us here. Appreciate you listening to all my nonsense and my history lessons.
It's great.
All right. So this is Thursday, huge weekend. We talked about how we're going to make you enough money so that you can go on one of these trips with FanDuel.
Here we go.
Get on their app. I'm telling you, man, when I start getting hot. But Saturday night, we're back. I've talked about it a couple of times. I love our live show right after the primetime game. Herbie and Fowler off air. Come right over to our show. Check out on Twitter at McShay13, at Scouts Inc. Mensch. We'll send out some links to it so you know exactly where to go. And we'll have some fun with it Saturday night. So
can't wait.
I'm looking forward to that, Mensch. Always a fun ride, bud.
Yeah, great show, man.
Right, I'll talk to you between now and Saturday, but I'll definitely talk to you Saturday night. See you, folks. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas, in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in DC. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit rg-help.com. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 1-800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York.